This Saturday, June 19th, Atlantic Street Center celebrates their 20th Juneteenth celebration at Rainier Beach Public Plaza. This is a celebration of freedom, resources, music, and Father's Day activities. Join Rainier Avenue Radio. We'll be broadcasting live from 11 to 1. There'll be food, live music, resource tables, speakers, and if you're interested, you can also get a vaccine. This Juneteenth celebration has been a staple in our community, and we are excited to welcome everyone back. So if you can come on down, make it down to Rainier Beach Public Plaza. Again, that's from 11 to 2. But you know what? If you can't make it, check us out right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. We'll be broadcasting live from 11 to 1 and bringing you all of the action, all of the educational resources, and everything that day. Atlantic Street Center's 20th anniversary Juneteenth celebration from 11 to 1 at the Rainier Beach Public Plaza, live on Rainier Avenue Radio from 11 to 1.
If you or a family member are 55 or over and need nursing home level care, but want to keep living where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no co-pays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out our show schedule, updated weekly at rainieravenuradio.world.
Welcome. It's Brenda Charles-Edwards, the host of Seniors Matter. We are live every Friday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on www.rainieravenuradio.world, your community radio station. You can also listen to us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch TV, and of course the Rainier Avenue Radio app. Seniors Matter invites a variety of guests to discuss issues and activities that may impact the lives of older adults, their families, and the community. If you're interested in knowing what's the best gift you can give your loved one and yourself, join me on a Zoom for a group or individual session on end-of-life planning. Call me at 206-683-2636. Also, don't forget that this Saturday, meaning tomorrow, is Juneteenth celebration live on Rainier Avenue Radio from 11 to 1. It's Atlantic Street Center's 20th annual celebration at the Rainier Beach Plaza. Celebration of freedom, resources, music, Father's Day activities. Also, there will be from 1 to 4, It Takes a Village with AMSA at the Othello Park Community Juneteenth Festival with music, a history lesson vendor, and community services. And also on Monday, the 1st, Rainier at noon to 9 p.m. Today, we're going to talk about Juneteenth, slave narratives. My guest is Dr. Georgia Stewart McDade, who is a local well-known author, independent historian, and a chapter member of the African Writers Alliance. Welcome to the show, Georgia. It's good to see you again. Dr. Georgia Stewart McDade, who is a local well-known author,
I'm hearing you twice.
Historian, and a chapter member of the African
So
Writers
I hope
Alliance.
this is okay, but it's
Georgia. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Georgia Stewart McDade. Hang on a second, Georgia. Author,
I'm hearing you twice.
Historian, and a chapter.
I hope this is okay, but it's
Georgia. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Georgia
Thank
Stewart
you.
McDade. Hang on a second, Georgia. Author,
I'm hearing you twice.
Historian, and a chapter.
I hope this is okay, but it's
Georgia. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Georgia
Thank
Stewart
you.
McDade. Hang on a second, Georgia. Author,
I'm hearing you twice.
Historian, and a chapter.
I hope this is okay, but it's
Georgia. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
It keeps repeating your introduction.
I'm hearing you defying. This is okay, but
I have no idea.
It keeps repeating your introduction.
I'm hearing you defying.
Georgia, are you on more than one station?
Oh, no. I mean, no. I just signed into Chrome. I mean, to
Okay.
StreamYard via Chrome.
Georgia, are you on more than one station?
No. I mean, I don't think so. Signed into Chrome, but I hear it twice.
Okay.
StreamYard.
So do I. Georgia, are you on more than one station?
No. I mean, I don't think so. Signed into Chrome, but I hear it twice.
Okay.
StreamYard.
So do I. Georgia, are you on more than one? Okay.
Is it okay now?
Now it stopped. No, it didn't. Okay, so I'm gonna leave and then come back and see if it's me. Hang on.
I think it may be okay now. It may be okay now. Brenda? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you do?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Not to worry,
know.
Jo-
Okay.
not to worry. So thank you for coming on. It's wonderful to see you. How have you been?
Just fine. Thank you. Overworked, but just fine. Not getting
And
paid.
definitely underpaid.
This is a good time to talk about Juneteenth and slavery.
Yes,
Oh, my
definitely. So I know you have a lot to share with my audience, and especially with Juneteenth, the slave narrative. What does that mean to you?
Okay, Juneteenth. I want to get this out. I've said it several times this week. Last year, someone asked me, when is Juneteenth? Twice someone asked. Monday, someone said, when is Juneteenth? Yesterday, somebody told me Juneteenth is the 17th. So think about the teens, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 is the last teen. So Juneteenth is June 19th. Let's never, ever get it wrong, and let's correct anybody else who gets it wrong. That's the first thing I want to say. Now, why do we celebrate Juneteenth? June 19th, 1865 was the day that people who were enslaved in Galveston, Texas, received the news that the Emancipation Proclamation had been passed. Now, many people get that part right. What so many people get wrong is the belief that it freed all of the slaves. It did not. The Emancipation Proclamation, signed by Abraham Lincoln, September 22nd, 1862, was to take effect January 1st, 1863. But the Emancipation Proclamation stipulated only those states that were, and this is a quote, rebellious. And that was the Confederate states. So if you were in any of the 11 Confederate states, then you were free officially. But if you happened to be in Connecticut or New York, then you were not free. And this is very important because
Can
all
you hear me,
slaves
Jeff?
were not free then.
I mean, Daniel.
And then
Okay.
in 1865, December 1865, the states ratified the 13th Amendment. And that's when all enslaved people were free, according to the law. You know, so often we have laws and they're supposed to take effect, and for all kinds of reasons they do not. So this is really important to me, that people remember Juneteenth is June 19th, and that it did not free all of the enslaved people in what was the United States of America. Now, as for the narratives, there are many narratives. Depending on your source, you may find that there are as many as 6,000 narratives. It took a long time for me to know that there were that many, but I did know about some. But of the 6,000, we probably have about 60 or so printed. You can go to the library, you can go online, and you can read these. And so when I was thinking about talking about the narratives, I decided it might be nice to start with Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass is a name that many of you know, but we don't usually think of what he wrote as a narrative, because really he wrote 3 autobiographies. And shucks, Maya Angelou wrote 7. I don't think anybody else has written that many. But in his autobiographies, he tells us about slavery. And I just want to give a little information here about the number of people who were taken from Africa between 1525 and 1866. That's a long time. And again, the sources differ, but we believe, and I like to use Henry Louis Gates figures, that between 12.5 million Africans were shipped to the so-called New World, and 10.7 of those million survived. And remember too, that of all of those, only about 388,000 made it to the United States. And why do we have so many more? Because they breeded them. They breeded people the way animals are bred. So that's something I want you to know. And when I tell you about these narratives or read at least 1 or 2 excerpts, I want people to remember this African proverb, and I love this proverb. It says, until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be glorified, or the hunter will be the hero. Now, why do I say that? You have two, the lion and the person, okay? The lion and the person. However, I'm sorry, I'm trying to turn my phone off and it will not go off, okay? However, if the hunter always gets to tell the story, you will get one story. But if the lion could only talk and tell the story, right, you would get a very different story. So this is what's happened with slavery. You have people telling you how wonderful slavery was and what great things were done for slaves. But if you take the time to look at some of these, what did I say? It's 150. We have about 150 in print. But if you look at some of them, you will see something very, very different. Now, I go to Douglass because Douglass was born into slavery, but he escaped when he was, I think, about 18 years old. And he learned to read, because the people who, I hate saying it, but the people who owned him, the woman, was very interested in teaching him how to read and how to write. And so he was a very good student. He learned. And then the Auld family owned him. And the man decided to let his brother use him. And what they soon discovered was that Frederick Douglass was teaching other slaves to read and write. Remember on Sunday, that was the one day that they could have church or whatever. So I don't remember how long it went on, but eventually somebody discovered this and they stopped it and said, no, you can't do that. And remember that African Americans were the only people in this country against whom there was a law that said anybody who taught us how to read and write would be penalized. And so
Right.
that makes a difference when people can't read and write. Okay. So from Frederick Douglass, as I said, I wanted to mention his books first because there are 3 books, and you can read a lot about slavery and what he thought about slavery and how it should change if you just take the time. And one more thing about Douglass, some people know some of his quotes, and I just love these quotes because he made them all these years ago. He died in 1895. And some of them we do quote, or we could quote today, especially with Congress passing the Juneteenth bill. It was Douglass who said, if there is no struggle, there's no progress. It was Douglass who said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And I love his essay, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. And this is a good time to talk about it. He says, and this is what he said in his lifetime, your 4th of July is a sham. Your boasted liberty an unholy license. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. And some of us can say the same thing today. And that's part of my feeling about the passing of Juneteenth. On the one hand, this is really good. It's being recognized. It's important. But these same people who voted unanimously for making Juneteenth a national holiday, many of those same people are voting to keep those voting suppression laws in effect or to pass those laws. Now, what's more important to us? What do we need more? If we have to choose, we need those laws. We need that infrastructure bill. And maybe I should be very cautious here, but I'm going to, if the infrastructure bill were passed as Biden wants it to be, we could call that some of the reparations. A lot of good stuff in there. But there are people who want to take it out. Now they want to go back to the denotation of infrastructure, the roads, the buildings and whatever. It reminds me of Reagan and his neutron bomb that would kill the people, but not the buildings. Well, what's more important? I think most sane people say it is the people. And there are just so many things that the country needs to do for all of its people, at least those people who are not millionaires and billionaires. And anyway, I love Douglass for that.
Georgia, just one thing. As far as Juneteenth being a holiday in the state of Washington, it doesn't start till next year.
But it legally, there have always been people who've celebrated it. I'm trying to remember the first I heard of it. Charlene has done Juneteenth celebration for a very, very long time. And I've just done a little many people just didn't know about it. People in Texas, for the most part, did, but a lot of us did not know about it. So, okay, it's nice that it's a federal holiday, but if you really want to make this African-American happy, then pass that infrastructure bill and pass that voter repression bill. Okay,
yes,
now,
I agree.
the
Go ahead.
one I want to read just a little. The time is going much faster than I wanted it to go. This book is called Women's Slave Narratives, Annie L. Burton and others. Now, in 2018,
Can you hold it up, Georgia?
Yes.
Can you hold the book up?
Yes. Can you see it?
Straighten it up.
Okay.
And a little higher. There you go. Got it.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
And I checked. It's online.
Okay.
Many
You can
of
put
the
it down
books-
so they can see your face.
Many of the books at these sites are not, you can only buy them at these sites. But until 2018, I had never been to a plantation, although I grew up in Louisiana and there were a lot of plantations, especially in southern Louisiana. I just would not go. Then I read a very long article in the Seattle Times about the Whitney plantation, and the man who owned it had invested $19 million to retrofit it. And what he wanted to do was fix it as close as it was possible to the time when it was a plantation. And what his plantation does that's different from all of the other plantations is slavery is talked about from the point of view of the slave. I went
that's
to one
different.
other one to compare, but this is very, very different. As I said, that's why I went there. And there was a bookstore, and I spent too much money, but there were all these books I'd never seen before. And that's where I saw women's slave narratives, and that's where I saw Black Indian slave narratives, and some more books, some of which I had. So I just want to tell you this first one, I want to read just a little of it, just because it's so different from what we are accustomed to. And Annie L. Burden's story comes up often. And I know why now. I know why. The title of it is Memories of Childhood Slavery Days. And the subtitle is Recollection of a Happy Life. And so I was telling somebody about it, and she said, "Oh, you think she was just being satirical?" I said, I wanted to believe that until I read farther. But here's one paragraph. On the plantation, there were 10 white children and 14 colored children. Our days were spent roaming about from plantation to plantation, not knowing or caring what things were going on in the great world outside our little realm. Planting time and harvest time were happy days for us. And she goes on for about 4 or 5 pages talking about these happy times that she endured. And I repeat, this is probably one of the most published ones because people want to hear, especially if your ancestors owned slaves, you want to hear this kind of thing. And then at the end of the narrative, there are a few things that aren't pleasant, but most of the time it's good. She says, "My life is like the summer rose." And then in the very end, she talks about how she starts to go to school, but it never gets the way many of us think. She says, "In each of the terms that I've attended, I have received the certificate showing that I have been regular and punctual in attendance, have maintained good deportment, and shown general proficiency." Now, I wanted you to hear that one because that's not one that we hear about too very often, okay? Now, this next one I took from the book Black Indians. You got this one? Black Indians?
Up a little higher.
Okay.
Up a little
got it?
higher, Georgia. There you
Got it?
go.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, this one is another one you can find on Amazon. I checked these out. And all of these stories are about Indian slaves. And a lot of people didn't know that Europeans, whites, enslaved Indians too. And that some Indians willingly went with, some blacks, some Africans, some slaves willingly went with Indians, but others were forced to go with Indians. And this book was done for the WPA. You may remember, or you may know about Roosevelt's WPA, the workmen's, right now it escapes me. But anyway, when Roosevelt set up a system similar to what Biden is trying to do with this infrastructure bill, a lot of people were given jobs. And one of the jobs was to go out and interview people who had been slaves. And remember, in 1933, there were quite a few people who, if they hadn't been slaves, they had relatives who had been slaves. So there were a lot of stories. And I really believe that one way to hire a lot of people right now is to send them out and get some of these stories of our contact with police. Because despite the terrible stories we know about, there are many, many stories that many of us don't know about, but they were true. And so we could tell these stories. But I want to read this paragraph. Let's see. And this is in his words. Very often what we have is somebody telling somebody the story and the other person writing it. But this one is in his words. He says, "The nigger stealers done stole me and my mammy out in Choctaw Nation. up in the Indian Territory when I was about 3 years old. Brother Nick, Sis Hannah, and my mammy and her 2 stepchildren was down on the river washing. The nigger stealers drive up in a big carriage, and mammy just thought nothing, cause the ford was near there, and people going on the road stopped to water the horses and rest a while in the shade. I'm going to stop there because we're running out of time, and I want to tell you a little more information. But he talks about how a white man drives up and he entices one kid over with candy, and then he entices another one. And when all of the kids over there, the woman goes over to see, their mother goes over to see, and what do? They push her into this vehicle, and that's the way they take the whole family. They take the whole family. And not too long after they took the family, they ended up selling the baby somewhere else, But just horrible things took place during the time of slavery. Oh, it's the Works Progress Administration, WPA. If you remember those letters, you can find a lot of information on that, the Works Progress Administration. And I want everybody to know about these books. My favorite African-American history book is by Lerone Bennett. I grew up reading Ebony magazine, and he had all these articles in there, and eventually he put them into a book. And the name of this book is Before the Mayflower. Now, I don't know about you, but I learned about 1619 when I was in elementary school. 1619 is the year that the first Africans were brought here, 19 or 20 of them. And Bennett, wise man that he was, called his book Before the Mayflower, because what? The Pilgrims arrived in 1620. So there's much in that book that you just don't find, or at least once upon a time, you couldn't find it anywhere else. And it was published in 1964. But what's there, as far as I know, is still true, and I always recommend it. Another book that's worth reading is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee.
Yeah, we got it.
And that was good. That one's by D. Brown. And that's the story of America told from the point of view of Native Americans. And so I love that one. And there are 2 books, and these books are told by European Americans, but they are just so wonderful, I believe. A People's History of the U.S. by Howard Zinn was published in 1980. And that book has been banned in many places. It's the kind of book that some people, not all people, but some people would say, we don't want that because it's fake or it's revisionist, and it is not. And this book is so wonderful that Free Speech Television has made documentaries based on the book. And they use a lot of real film. You can see what happened to union workers. You can see what happened to women who were trying to vote. So that's just really worth reading. A People's History of the U.S. by Howard Zinn. And the last one is called Battle Cry Freedom, and it's by James McPherson. It was written in 1988. Several years ago, I went to Gettysburg. I always wanted to go to Gettysburg. I had to learn Lincoln's speech when I was in elementary school, I believe it was. But I just always wanted to go to Gettysburg, and I finally got a chance. And I always go to these bookstores. So I went to the woman over the bookstore, and I said, what is the best book on the Civil War? And she didn't even pause. She just said, Battle Cry Freedom. And that book is by James McPherson. Yes.
I got to stop you. We're out of time. I'm going to have to bring you back.
1988. Okay. Thank you.
This has been great. Thank you to my audience for listening. I hope that you've been educated and you can appreciate these books and go check them out for yourself. Thank you, Georgia. Have a great day. Live your life like it's golden. Up next is a coronavirus special edition with Smooth Jam All Stars. Talk to you later, Georgia. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Rainier Avenue